Alright, so now on to the second part of the female reproductive system. Okay, so now we need to learn about these hormones. These are the same hormones used in the male reproductive system. GnRH, we learned it's released by the hypothalamus and causes the anterior pituitary to release FSH and LH. So that in the female, FSH and LH help with the oocyte maturation, help with the growth of the follicles, and production of estrogen and progesterone from the follicles. Estrogen and LH then cause meiosis 1 to complete and the secondary. Okay, so here just a diagram showing this. Hypothalamus is releasing GnRH, anterior pituitary gland releases FSH and LH. Those are carried through the bloodstream. They go to the ovaries. So then FSH and LH cause the follicles to get larger, for the follicles to release estrogen, progesterone, and ovulation, meiosis 1 to complete for LH and estrogen. After ovulation, the cells that used to surround the oocyte stay behind, and now they're called, or it's just called the corpus luteum. Okay, so know that the corpus luteum, as we wrote before, it releases estrogen and progesterone. These two hormones lead to the thickening of the endometrium layer of the uterus, which again, that's the inner layer of the uterus. And it prevents the shedding of the endometrium. But at the end of the cycle, about day 28, the corpus luteum degenerates. When it degenerates, it no longer releases estrogen and progesterone, and then the endometrium layer, or this inner lining, gets shed. So this picture here is a really little confusing, but it's trying to show you the levels of the hormones and what's happening with the oocyte and the uterus. So at the beginning, LH and FSH are low. So then about day 14, we get a spike in LH especially, and we get a spike in estrogen. And so LH and estrogen cause ovulation, meiosis 1 to complete. So then corpus luteum stays behind and releases estrogen and progesterone. So those hormones lead to the thickening of the endometrium lining and for it to stay intact. And here just another picture showing the inner lining of the endometrium, how it's getting thicker. But when the hormone levels drop, then it gets shed. Okay, then put a big star on this slide. If fertilization does occur, the embryo, the baby, releases this other hormone called human chorionic gonadotropin. This is the one that is detected on pregnancy tests. So this hormone coming from the baby goes to the corpus luteum and keeps the corpus luteum alive, allows it to keep on releasing estrogen and progesterone. And so these hormones prevent the endometrium shedding. But if there is no pregnancy, corpus luteum degenerates and the endometrium is shed. Female infertility, inability to conceive a child. 90% of cases have a physical cause. 60% of infertility cases are due to abnormality in the female reproductive system is saying. So some of the causes of infertility, you'll see these on your study guide. Anovulation means that not enough FSH and LH are getting released for the anterior pituitary. Might be some kind of a genetic disorder. Then endometriosis, endometrial tissue grows in the abdominal cavity. And infections can also cause infertility. Menopause, the stopping of the reproductive cycles, usually occurs late 40s or early 50s. So here, know that menopause means that low amounts of estrogen and progesterone are now being produced. Okay, it says the ovaries no longer produce as much as they did previously. And so then no more ovulation occurs, no more follicles are getting matured. Location of the mammary glands and the parts here. You'll see these different parts on the picture that I gave you. Treating breast cancer, different types of treatments, surgical, first the biopsy is done, self-exams, mammograms are very helpful for this. I'm not going to ask you anything about this slide here. Contraceptives. Let's talk first about the birth control pill. Birth control pill, it contains forms of estrogen and progesterone. So here, these are acting as negative feedback inhibition. If you remember, we learned that the hormones go and inhibit the glands that help to produce them. So estrogen, progesterone go up to the anterior pituitary and tell it to stop releasing FSH and LH. And so the birth control pill causes low levels of FSH and LH, which then prevents follicle maturation and ovulation. And so an egg cell is not going to be coming out of the ovary. Now, even if it does, these hormones, or estrogen, progesterone, they also thicken the cervical mucus. So cervix meaning that was the gate or the entrance to the uterus. So this mucus forms there, and this mucus prevents the sperm cells from getting through. This same thing occurs during pregnancy. During pregnancy, estrogen, progesterone levels are high, and so they prevent FSH and LH release, and they also cause the cervical mucus to thicken. And so injection of, it's saying here, medroxyprogesterone acetate could also be done to prevent pregnancy. And then we see here pictures of other birth control devices. Sterilization methods. You'll see on your study guide vasectomy is when the vas deferens is cut, and a tubal ligation is when the uterine tube is cut. Sexually transmitted infections. Know the difference between the bacterial and the viral STIs. Which ones are bacteria, which ones are viruses, because then the treatment depends on the type of infection. Pelvic inflammatory disease is if the bacteria, gonorrhea, chlamydia, they enter through the vagina and they can spread the infection to the internal reproductive organs. And when this happens, the uterine tubes can end up getting closed, and then the sperm cells are not able to reach the egg cell, and that would cause infertility.